This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Hello and welcome to Tracks from the Edge, Trek FM's show in which we provide audio commentary for the latest and greatest episodes of Star Trek. I'm Mike.
I'm Max.
And today we're going to be taking a look at episode number 4 of Short Treks, episode number 748 of All Treks, Star Trek, Short Treks, The Escape Artist. So, before we get into our commentary, should we take a little look at who's working behind the scenes on this here episode? Because it's significant to the larger whole of Star Trek.
Yep.
Mike McMahon wrote this episode. And you know what? I was thinking about this the other day. There has never been a creator of a Star Trek sequel series, spin-off series, whatever series you want to call it, which isn't Star Trek the original series, who has not previously written at least one episode or movie of Star Trek before creating said series. And this is true now, too, of Star Trek Lower Decks, because Mike McMahon is the creator of Star Trek Lower Decks, which is the animated series for everyone who's, not obsessively reading the trade magazines or whatever you want to call them. So now he wrote this. So now the streak continues. Could Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage be the first to break that trend?
Anything's possible, I suppose.
But it doesn't matter because we're not talking about them. We're talking about Mike McMahon. And hey, there's been a lot of people who are like, oh, animated Star Trek. That doesn't sound like a good idea. Comedic Star Trek?
That sounds great to me.
How could that possibly work?
Well, some of the best episodes were, so...
I don't know what you're talking about. Clearly, you can't do comedy in Star Trek. And, Mike McMahon. Who's that? What's this Rick and Morty? So, Max, Mike McMahon is a person who I was not familiar with really at all prior to us discovering that he was working on Star Trek. But you were very familiar with his work and very complimentary of his work on Rick and Morty. So
yeah.
And I've since gone back and watched some Rick and Morty. I've watched, I don't know, maybe like 8 episodes or something like that, including 1 or 2 that he wrote.
There's not that many. You can watch the whole thing in an afternoon.
I know, but I didn't. So, so you tell us. You tell the theoretical listener who has not seen Rick and Morty and who may be a little skeptical about animated Star Trek comedy, why we should be looking forward to this series.
Star Trek has spent a long time retreating from the notion that it is a series set in the future where anything is possible. It has spent decades trying to somehow legitimize itself by fighting a war that other people outside of it decided it needed to fight, that it needed to be serious. And Star Trek's like core idea of like going out into the unknown and exploring something that you don't quite understand and learning things that way was sort of it was basically it was dialed back so significantly to the point that they no longer felt comfortable even being in their own future. And the idea that a show like Rick and Morty that basically takes imagination and doing something that you've never done before and makes that the thing that they're doing, and the reason that they're doing it is because it's new and because it's different and because it takes a different sort of thought process in order to understand it. The idea is everything is a new kind of puzzle and a new sort of mystery, and that level of imagination is something that Star Trek has been lacking for my adult life. I've been very annoyed by this for a long time. But the idea of somebody, coming from a radically different worldview and a radically different approach to these stories, I'm very in favor of that.
I was just thinking about this today because I was on YouTube looking up something else and some random thing came across my YouTube algorithm where it was like, here's what's wrong with Star Trek Discovery. And they started talking about how the people making Star Trek Discovery don't like Star Trek and don't know what Star Trek is. And I don't know. It was a lot of like weird stuff and how, this is not Star Trek and this is Star Trek or whatever. And it got me thinking, like, people are so concerned about Star Trek being what it is that they can't imagine it being something more, which is really weird because that's kind of the whole message of the show, which is that humanity has great potential, which has been untapped, and we need to grow beyond our present state in order to become great. What Lower Decks is going to do is it's going to expand that universe.
I think because we've got a Picard show, we got an animated show, we got Discovery, we got 3 different things. We're covering multiple genres, and we're covering the future of this universe.
Yeah,
we're covering the future of one of our most established characters and what happens in their life and what happens like after all of these crazy things happen. This is a significant enough universe that we can have all of these things. And I have no problem with like, hey, let's do a Khan series. It's just a story about Khan on Earth before he went into space.
Well, that's not
fine.
What it's going to be, but yeah.
It doesn't matter. You've got enough space to have that kind of thing and like put a lot of time and energy into it because it's not the one thing that you're doing. If that was the one thing that you were doing, that would be a bummer.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? And that's why like this era of Star Trek in a lot of ways is the most exciting. It's because you don't have like 2 parallel stories going on, in 2 different series which just take place on other sides of the galaxy or whatever. It is playing with different time frames, different everything.
That was a bummer on a different level.
Yeah, but this is it's they really can do anything, and they can do a Starfleet Academy show, and they can do.
Let's hope they don't do that.
I'm totally okay with it, especially from the creators of the OC. Bring it, bring it on. Anyway,
we don't need another teen drama, guys.
You know what? Bring it. Do you watch Runaways?
No.
Okay, I don't watch it either, but I want to. That to me seems like the best correlation because it's like they're doing that genre which they've established so well in sort of like your prototypical fashion, but now doing it as like a superhero show. Like how does that, it's like genre bending, and now doing it as like a Star Trek show, that's more genre bending. I like that. I like that idea a lot. And I like Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage a lot. So whatever. I'm totally down with the Starfleet Academy show. But
yeah, I'm okay with everything except for it being a teen drama. Like that's the only problem that I have with it. Like, we have too many of those to begin with. I'm sick of teenagers.
What about Wesley Crusher?
He is an anomaly, literally an anomaly, because he has supernatural abilities.
Okay. Fine, whatever. Anyway, but bringing it back to Mike McMahon and the idea of Star Trek being comedy, like that's the thing, right? Like we're talking about like new storytelling techniques and whatever and animation and all this stuff and everything, but just on just a basic level, the idea of like Star Trek as a comedy. Hey, let's do that. Why not? I mean, this is something which you've been advocating for years and years and years.
Yes.
I mean, there are numerous podcasts which now have pretty much been wiped from the internet, but I've got them stored on a hard drive somewhere, where you pitch a show in which you have well, you called it the Starship Reliable, I believe, right?
Yeah, that was the joke that I came up with at the time. The idea of exploring the future of the Star Trek universe. Just take it to the next level. Like all the good names are taken, and you've got to go with a ship that doesn't have such an amazing name, and people who are more relatable, and they're not the worst in the fleet, and they're not the best in the fleet, and that's the difference, because we've always seen the best. And even if they don't start as the best, by the end of the show, like by season 7 of any of these series, like these people are superheroes, you know? And that always bugged me. And you don't need to make a show about the best people. You don't need to make a show about the worst people. Right in the middle, you've got something very interesting. And so I thought that would be the best way to explore that space while also making it fun, because when you're doing your job and it's a struggle, it's hilarious. Like life is pretty funny. And when it's a relatable life in a science fiction universe, it's still pretty funny.
And Star Trek always has been about social commentary, and one of the most effective forms of social commentary, going back to the very beginning of social commentary, is satire. So you know what? Hey.
All right.
Well, should we get into this episode finally?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. So we're going to start it up at 0 on the counter here. And for those people who haven't listened, you can play back the episode with us, and we will discuss theoretically what's going on screen. I got a message on Facebook from someone who was very complimentary of our commentary, but he said, you guys were like, that's kelp. And then that was like the last time we referenced anything which was on screen. Yeah. And my thought was like, oh, so he's a new listener then. But I mean, hey, we are just going to ride this wave. Last night I saw this movie called Surfer, Teen Confronts Fear, and the thing that I learned from that movie is you just got to ride the wave. You just got to ride the wave, and if you do, you will reach a higher level.
Well, that's surfing.
That's surfing. So that's what we're going to do.
We're going to surf.
We're going to start it at 0 on the counter, and we're going to give a countdown. And if you want to watch the episode along with us, go ahead. If you don't, as was proven last week, it's probably not going to make much of a difference.
Why not?
All right. So if you're ready, Max.
I've been ready for a while.
Okay. We will get this started up in 3, 2, 1, start. Oh, there's the Discovery, Star...
Even though it isn't in this.
Trek. No, it's not. Star Trek, Short Treks. Oh my God, what's happening? Oh my God, Mike McMahon has already ruined Star Trek, and we're not even past the opening titles of his... Okay, so here we are into the episode.
Yes.
And there's Rainn Wilson.
Yep. Dwight's got a beard.
As I think it was Trek Corps pointed out, that this Tellarite ship, if you look at it, it's the brig of the Discovery with a modified Shenzhou captain's seat. So that's pretty cool.
Wow, they really didn't try very hard, did they?
No, I think they didn't need to, right? Because I don't see the brig there at all. But if you,
it's one of those things. If you're looking for like where they're shooting a thing, it's a funny situation because like every once in a while you're like, wow, Doctor Who keeps using that same set. They just keep redressing it. Like the window is always in the same place, and the roof is always in the same place. And it's like, why do they keep reusing the same set for all these Christmas episodes? It's kind of weird. It's kind of like, are they trying to tell us like Christmas has something to do with this particular layout? Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's talk about Doctor Who for the rest of this.
I mean, like Star Trek 6, you look at it and like you can tell, like, you know, the president's office is very, very clearly 10 forward and everything like that. But there's other times, I mean, like, I love it. There's some commentary somewhere with the Okudas, and Mike Okuda is like, this table is the same observation room table which was used on the Enterprise D. They just changed the tabletop and the legs.
Yeah.
To which I'm like, well, but
we've covered that. That's it's a weird thing. I've encountered this in like a few books about like the notion of permanence, that like in Japan like a temple can burn down and they rebuild it, and it's like when you ask them like, oh, so this isn't the same one, they're like, no, it is the same one, but like all the pieces are gone and you built all the pieces again, it's not the same one. And they're like, no, it is. And it's like, okay, so we have different understandings of how these things work. So if you take the table's parts away and then put a table in the same place, it's not the same table, but in a sense it is.
Yeah. It's whatever. Cool. All right. Yeah. So anyway, moving on to see. Look, we're already not talking about what's on screen.
Right.
So
it's important that we keep to ourselves and we know thyself. That's important.
Okay. So speaking of knowing thyself, here this robotic Harry Mudd is having a flashback.
Spoilers.
That's interesting. You know,
Is he?
A lot of it. Well, I don't know. Or is it implanted memories? I mean, obviously he needs like information, but these robots are rather sophisticated, and that brings up another interesting point, which was brought up by Trek FM's very own Brandon Shea Matala, and which really got me thinking: does this take place after iMud? It would seem to make sense. Because look, okay, see, I'm not super duper familiar with iMud because, let's face facts, it's not very good. But I did some reading of some synopses, and I did some texting of some people who really like it and all the rest of it. And I rewatched the introduction and the exit of Harry Mudd in that episode. And as far as I can tell, so they're from like another, I don't know, galaxy, right? And they're put onto this planet, and then Harry Mudd goes there, and that's where he gets his android technology. So it doesn't really make sense that like a decade before he's developing android technology, unless it's just a big coincidence. And I mean, you could say like, oh, well, the DeMilo's crew is wearing, Discovery era uniforms, but we're already seeing that there's some overlap. So maybe there's a few, people out there who still have these uniforms floating around, because why not? I think that Brandon is right. I think that this episode takes place after iMud. Because even in the thing, like on Memory Alpha, someone points out one of the androids in the thing at the end is wearing Harry Mudd's costume from iMud.
Yeah. I think the question is more, it goes more to this. Have we ever seen the real Harry Mudd?
Oh, that's a question which sci-fi.com asked Rainn Wilson in an interview. And Rainn Wilson said he believes that up until now, we've always seen the real Harry Mudd. But he thinks it would be cool if going forward, we're not sure. Then again, he also said at Star Trek Las Vegas, when someone asked him, does this episode take place before or after Discovery Season 1, his answer was, I don't know. I should find that out. When clearly it does. So maybe Rainn Wilson isn't the most reliable person to ask about such things because it seems like he doesn't really care.
Yes.
Which I think is fine.
It doesn't bother me.
Because it doesn't matter. It could take place anywhere. I mean, not really, but it could. And also setting it after I Mudd makes more sense too, because like otherwise you've got to question what the turnaround is, because when last we saw Harry Mudd on Discovery, he was in good graces with the Federation, right? Which that in itself doesn't make any sense, but whatever. If that's what we're going to do, that's what we're going to do, and that's what they did, so that's what it is, right?
I mean, look.
Do you want to go back to talking about what's on screen? There
are some real issues with the timeline of Harry Mudd's life and whether or not he is accepted by the Federation. I don't get what's going on here. Like, to me, like the bounty on Harry Mudd is super weird. I have a hard time understanding how the Federation would handle a bounty on someone's head. Like, bring this man in. He's a prisoner. We will reward you with money that we don't even use. Yeah. It's really weird.
And it's also weird. And I mean, obviously, there are people on the fringes and everything because Harry Mudd is one of them. But when you think about it, like the Tellarites are part of the Federation, right? So, yeah. Anyway, but whatever. They're common smugglers or whatever. And by that I mean like they have this in common, not that they're like common people in the William Shatner sense, you know what I mean? But they're anyway. So this episode has like a really interesting structure as we're now into the third flashback for a character who has never experienced any of these things.
Are they flashbacks? Like, to me, I'm not sure what these are. Like, are these actually him flashing back? Because he doesn't seem to use the information in the present tense in any way.
No, but you do see him react to it. Like, when he comes back out of it, he's like, well, actually, I guess I did do that in the past. You know?
I don't know for sure. It's the reveal that he's an android and the android's behavior. It's suddenly so strange. Like, it's not as though like they like all started like going on the fritz and started repeating themselves. Like, how did they not end up saying the same thing a couple times in a row? Because they start immediately like going on this weird like broken record thing. It's these are weird devices, man. I don't.
So what do you, I mean? What do you think about them? What do you think about the way that they're used in this episode?
The thought process I had as soon as it was revealed that Harry Mudd had created these duplicates, I was like, okay, so he's got a bunch of these things. And then it was revealed that he's the one who's been selling these things in order to make a profit on people who wanted to make a profit on the potential bounty on Harry Mudd. Okay, fine. How hard is it to make these things? Like, what is the overhead on this particular little economic model he's got going on here? Because he's got to be putting a significant amount of energy into making these androids, and he's then selling them. Like, he's not getting them back. Like,
well, but he's selling them for 50,000 credits, right? So if they cost like 25,000 to make, then he's turning a profit.
Yeah, but he's also expending a lot of energy. He's traveling around, finding potential buyers. And like, there's a lot that goes into this, and I have a lot of questions about how it works. Again, I am once again most interested in the economics of this universe, and I'm very curious about how this functions. I mean,
I would assume Harry Mudd, being who he is, he created one android and then had that android create the other androids.
So he multiplicity'd it?
Yeah, so there's not, as far as like, because, he doesn't exactly like labor, right?
So a few androids into this process, he's got some pretty rubbish androids rocking around. Like, maybe several generations into this process, they don't even look like him anymore. No, like they kind of look like him, but they don't look enough like him that they could be played by Rainn Wilson.
Like maybe they look like C. Robert Carmichael or whatever that guy's name is.
Yeah, maybe. Like, that might explain everything. All of the pieces might line up perfectly if we go down this thread long enough.
Okay. All right. It's reasonable. So here we are on the DeMilo, which is an interesting name for a ship. And, yeah.
Well, they can't call it Venus because that's also a place.
It is, but you could name a ship after a place. I mean, there's the USS Yorktown, which is clearly named after the Yorktown shopping center.
Yeah, but it's not a planet.
In Lombard, Illinois?
That's the problem.
Okay.
If it was a planet, it might get complicated because they don't deal, generally speaking, with cities in space.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So here we are with probably, let's say, a Gen 2 android, Harry Mudd. And he's meeting a whole bunch of other Gen 1s and Gen 3s and Gen 2s.
Yeah, see, the guy on the right, he's got a jacket which is very similar to the iMud jacket.
Yep.
Yeah.
He might give that jacket to one of his androids.
But it seems like they're also replicating that vest, because if I'm not mistaken, he wore that vest in Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. And you see another android wearing that vest, too. Or a couple of them, maybe. So,
well, I mean, maybe he just got a good deal on vests.
You know that every bar at the Rio next year in Vegas is going to be selling jippers.
Yeah, what is a jipper?
I think it's a made-up drink.
Okay.
And here's the reveal.
Yep.
Not just the music and not just the comedy, but also like, well, this whole scene and sort of the photography and everything really gives me a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe to this episode. You get that?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah. You know, regular human beings in space dealing with aliens.
Yeah.
It's a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe.
Yeah.
Which might not exist anymore. So
yeah. See, like that's a jipper. He's got those like starfish fruit things. Starfish fruit. Starfish.
Starfish fruits.
Starfish fruit. Yeah. So he's a clever guy, that Harry Mudd.
Yeah, it seems so.
I mean, you know, if I had more time, I would have rewatched iMud and then also the animated series episode to see exactly like where or if it would all fit. But I'm going to say, I'm going to work under the assumption that Brandon is right as per usual, and that this episode takes place post iMud.
Yeah, I like the idea that it takes place long beforehand because that would explain the different actor problem.
That's a good assessment too.
Because I am always trying to figure out how to make this show fit with the original series and the other shows, despite like the stylistic differences and, you know, the recastings. I mean, it's gonna drive me crazy when I have to deal with new Spock again. It's just how many Spocks?
You just gotta let it go, you know.
Oh no,
can't let it go. All right.
I refuse to. I refuse to let it go.
All right. Well, that's healthy. So, so what did you think about this? I mean, here, we've been waiting for this forever. I think probably us personally, we've been waiting for this episode out of the short treks more than any of the others. And what did you think of the finished product?
I thought it was good. I thought it was solid. You know, it's really short. It's really to the point. I think it was really cool. Once it was over, I was like, I have a lot of questions about that. But number one, I can use this to justify my hypothesis that Rainn Wilson could theoretically be the real Harry Mudd, and the other Harry Mudd is a replicant.
Okay,
I'm okay with that. I'm on board with that, and it can also help. Make some other details fit in, because if there are androids walking around, then we could explain a lot of things.
Yeah, it could. Like just Android Harry Muds or androids in general?
Androids in general. Just, I mean, we got a couple Pikes in the mix now. We got to explain a lot of little facial differences in between people, and I would like to have an explanation for that. I mean, maybe there's a whole bunch of like android replicants of these people flying around. Maybe there's an entire android Starfleet, and they just look radically different, and they interact with their devices differently. And maybe because they're androids, they don't need the same hardware in order to interact with their ships. So maybe their ships have a very barren design aesthetic, and like when they use like data and stuff, they just have little like plastic rectangles and stuff that they insert into things. They're androids. They don't need the same inputs that we do. So, yeah, maybe the entire original series was androids.
See, it's so weird. I mean, and I know that you don't I know that none of this stuff is like a deal breaker for you, and you're not like, it's not real Star Trek if it doesn't have William Shatner in it. But at the same time, like, there's that part of your brain which, like, forces you to try to make it fit. Just
headcanon.
Just because. But yeah, well, I mean, remember that episode of Voyager where, like, it's revealed that they're all made up of, like, vegetable matter or something like that, and then they, like, disintegrate after a certain time, but, like...
I thought they were, like, nanotech.
Whatever
like,
it was.
Goo.
Just the idea that there was, like, an alternate Voyager, like, flying around doing stuff for, like, a year and a half or whatever it was. Like, that was really cool. And, maybe that's the case here. I don't think it is, but why not? However, as far as explanations are concerned and all that stuff, I mean, I still think that your theory about Star Trek, the original series, being a historical fiction television series, which was produced in the 24th century and enjoyed by, cast or crew members of the various
this is a very old hypothesis that I had in the early seasons of The Next Generation. And I was like, wait, hold on. There's got to be a way to make this work. And I was like, okay, so they know who Captain Kirk is. It's got to be a way to make it. Okay, what if, like, all right, so what if, like, hey, Star Trek, they don't have Star Trek in their history. Wait, what if they had Star Trek? What if they watched a show called Star Trek that was about Captain Kirk? Wait, that explains it. Star Trek, the original series, is a TV show in the Star Trek universe that was created about Captain Kirk. That explains everything. It explains why, like, there are parts that don't make sense. It explains the bad makeup. It explains the set design. It explains all of those little like inconsistencies and continuity errors. All of it falls into place because you can just say all those little details. They fudged it for dramatic effect. Everything works. And then they showed the original freaking Enterprise on Next Generation when Scotty showed up for no reason. And it's like, okay, that breaks everything.
No, not necessarily, because what if Scotty was just like, well...
Scotty's so old he forgot what it looked like. No, he's just been watching the show for all these years. He's like, this seems right.
I like the way that it looked on the show. Yeah. It's like I mean, when they were making Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and they were like, well, we need to recreate the jacket that he wore, and they were going through the archives, and they're like, here's the original jacket. And also, here's a jacket which was made, like, for sale, which is vastly inconsistent with the original design, but, whatever. That's, like, what they were selling in the Lucasfilm fan club or something like that. And, the costume designers looked at that and were like, that's the one that we want to use. And then they created new jackets based on that thing.
Yeah.
That's what happened in Relics.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's, I don't know. I don't think that's solid enough. I can't.
Regardless of the little inconsistencies, I think that theory, like, I mean, you've come up with, like, a lot of crazy theories about pretty much everything. Like, that one right there, that's, like, one of your best. That's, like, top 5 all-time Max theories.
Nah, the Space Class. Space Class is way better than the Star Trek as a TV show hypothesis.
I'm not sure what the space glass one is.
Oh, space glass? It takes when energy passes through it, including light, it creates an audio tone, which explains why when a ship explodes, we hear it.
Oh, I don't think I had ever heard that theory. But that's a good one too. All right, cool. Space glass. All right, that's fair. The original series TV show one is better though. So, anyway.
No, space glass. You got to use space glass in so many things. It's got to be in every sci-fi show set in space. It's a vital piece of headcanon required for almost everything. You need space glass in Star Wars, Star Trek. Fifth Element's got a lot of space glass. There's space glass everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's fair. All right. I also enjoyed this episode. I would say it's number 1 of the 4 for me. I would go Mud, Tilly, Calypso, Saru. What's your ranking?
I don't know. I think Calypso is still a little bit better. I think Calypso, Mud, Tilly, or Tilly Mud. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that a Kelpian adventure is the last one.
Okay. All right. Agreed. So, boy, only 2 weeks until this new season starts. We got the Pike, and we got the Spock, and we got the anamorphic lenses, and what more?
Once again, Saru doesn't catch a break.
Yep. Yeah. Poor Saru. One day.
He abandoned his family to join Starfleet, and he's never going to make captain.
One day.
It's never going to happen. This guy.
25 years from now,
God.
At Vegas, Alex Kurtzman is going to walk out on stage and be like, we're doing a lot more Star Trek series now, and I want to bring someone out to introduce the next one, and they're going to bring out Doug Jones, and he's going to be like, Saru is back. And this time, it's going to be way different. He's going to be a captain. And the place is going to go crazy.
I want Doug Jones to come out and say, Saru's coming back. But fun fact about Kelpians, as they get older, they look more and more like people. So he's going to be wearing a whole bunch less makeup.
Yep. Anyway. All right. Well, let's wrap this up, shall we?
Let's wrap it up.
As always, you can find us doing these for each new episode of Star Trek. You can also find me on Twitter at Mumbles3K, and you on Twitter at
Max Hegel.
Max Hegel. And you can find us on filmdamagepod.com doing a show called Film Damage, where we take a look at movies from the perspective of the booth. I know we've been on hiatus for a while because we've been doing these things, and that might happen again since we're going to be still doing these things. But there is a commentary up there for Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, if you want to...
We talk a lot about this Harry Mudd episode of Short Treks in it. We're very screen specific.
Yeah, if you sync it up with this episode of Short Treks, it'll work perfectly. Anyway, be sure to check out our Discovery coverage throughout the week. Live from the Edge with Bruce and Brandy will air live on YouTube and then be released as a podcast the following morning, shortly after the new episodes drop. Then you've got our commentaries on Tracks from the Edge, and then we'll discuss your feedback on Postcards from the Edge with Amy. And, of course, you can catch full analysis on the Edge main show with Patrick. And then, to wrap up the week, we have Notes from the Edge with Chris Jones, where he talks about links between Discovery and the broader franchise. And you can find all of these in the main feed for the Edge or in the Trek FM master feed. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Discovery. The best place to do that is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook, where Amy Nelson will collect your feedback for Postcards from the Edge. You can also find us on Twitter at Trek FM or send us email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and choose the Edge. And we would like to thank our associate producers, Norman C. Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Reitner, Ryan Malett, and Chris Tribuzio. Thank you very much for all of your support. We really, really appreciate it. If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows going and even become an AP yourself, visit patreon.com/trekfm for all the details. All right. Well, I guess that's pretty much it for this week. We'll be back in just 2 short weeks for the first episode of Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, which is called Brother, so clearly a prequel to the Next Generation episode Brothers.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
It takes place like decades before. Mm-hmm. There's only one brother.
You can see the crystalline entity and whatnot.
Yeah. So, but only one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So thanks for listening. And until then, be sure to trek your loops. There's one person who got that joke.